I'll be glad to answer any questions that anybody's got, and then we'll go sign some books.
In the back of the book, there's a blurb on Henry Smith. How did that come about?
Well, we're friends, but it was the last blurb I got. I mean, she's been pretty busy. She won the National Book Award, last go around. Pretty great book. Her book. We've known each other for a while. We have the same lawyer, and I guess that's probably how we met. We've known each other for about 10 years, 11 years. We had the same attorney for a long time. So, who's also married to my manager, and my manager's known her for years. Patty moved back to New York around the time I started going there on a regular basis and started recording for a label called Artemis. It was based in New York, and so I met her during that period. So. All the way in the back.
Your Irish priest character?
Yeah.
I know you spent a lot of time in Ireland.
Yeah.
Did you pick up some archetypes on your visits there?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's some of that. I mean, I grew up in San Antonio, and I think the idea that there's this the number of Irish priests in San Antonio at that time is part of the story. You know, if you read the book, and Ireland, was losing her best and brightest automatically to immigration until about 15 years ago, and so the priesthood was one of the ways that people got out of the country, and there were Irish priests all over the world, especially in any English-speaking country, which is sort of ironic. But there are lots of things, details. We have Letterfrack. The only reason I know where Letterfrack is I spent a lot of time in the west of Ireland. Letterfrack is in County Galway. It's at the very end of the road up in Connemara. I know a couple of really great fiddle players from there, sisters called the Canes, who are really great players. They happen to be from Letterfrack, so I borrowed their hometown from them.
Are they Galway girls?
Well, the Galway girls, you'll never get that one out of me.
I guess you probably know a lot about Hank Williams, and I'm wondering how you found out what you know about Hank Williams. Did you read about stuff, or did you talk to folks who knew him and his legend stuff better than the real stuff?
Well, I know a few people that knew Hank Williams. The first person I ever met, I guess the first person I met that knew Hank Williams was a songwriter called Leon Payne, who actually wrote Lost Highway and was still around San Antonio when I got out and started playing before I moved to Nashville. The next person I met who knew Hank Williams was Johnny Gimble, the fiddle player from Texas, who actually was a drifting cowboy for a while. And we had a tape machine break on a song demo session of mine in Nashville, and I was like, this is my first demo session, I think I was 20. And I finally had Johnny Gimble in to play on the session. It just blew my mind that you could get these guys whose names you've been reading off the back of records to come in and play on a demo session. But there were very few of them that didn't play demos if they weren't doing it, if they didn't have a master session booked. And then we get Gimble in there. I've been trying to book him for a while. And then the simplest thing that could happen to a multi-track tape recorder happened. It just wouldn't go around and around. The transport locked up and the tape machine wouldn't work. So I ended up, while they were trying to, unsuccessfully as it turned out, to fix it, I got to sit and talk to Johnny Gimble for about 2 hours. And he told me a lot about touring with Hank Williams. I've read everything there is. There's, I guess the Colin Escott book is the one that most people know about. I read that. Marty Stewart has a great collection of country music memorabilia in general. And in fact, he owns a letter from Toby Marshall to Hank's mother that was written after Hank died, and the basic tone of which is, "I ain't did nothing," and it's a really interesting letter. It's an artifact. But the book's not so much about what I know about Hank Williams as it is what I think I know about Hank Williams, and it is fiction. And most of his descendants hate me anyway, so I'm not really worried about kissing anybody.
I don't want to say much more about the book than you did, but do you think there's room for miracles in the modern age?
I think there are miracles in the modern age. I'm standing here. You know, and that's part of what this book's about. I don't think that, you know, the book's about the way we witness miracles and the difference in the way we witness miracles. And that sometimes, you know, we're living in an age when the difference in the way we witness the world and the way we, especially the parts of things that happen around us that we don't understand, or you know, we're killing each other over those differences, and differences in spirituality. Religion and spirituality, not particularly religious person, but you know, I kind of have to be a spiritual person. I'm a recovering addict. I have to believe in a power greater than myself, or I'm not standing here right now. Because for me, it's still 12-step programs. I go to meetings and call my sponsor. They do that stuff. Occasionally, when I'm really, really desperate, actually hit my knees. But it's not. I heard a great a description between about the difference between religion and spirituality. Bill Maher doesn't believe that there's a difference, but there is. And I know a pretty good one. It's been bouncing around 12-step programs for years. I don't know who thought it up. But religion is a group of people's agreement about what God may or may not be. Therefore, that's political. That's political in and of itself. Spirituality is one person's one-on-one relationship with God, or God as they understand Him, or a power greater than they are. I don't have any problem with the word God. Pretty far from a Christian. Pretty far from a Muslim. But I do have to, I mean, I've said it over and over again, it finally ended up in a song that I wrote originally for John Bias, is saying, but I believe that, you know, there is a God, and it ain't me. And that's as far as I've gotten.
Some of us would beg to differ.
Yeah, well, and you'd be wrong. And keep coming back. But it's like, it's one of those things that I just, I need to believe that there's something greater than I am, but I don't really need to understand it. I'm not so sure that the stuff going, the spirituality in this book is about trying to understand what God is or God isn't, but just trying to understand that we all see that differently, and that it's okay. that it's all right in the long run. Uh-oh.
You said what? You're coming back around in about a month and a half. Any chance we'll hear any hand covers?
You might. I'm hoping to change the show like this tour. It's going to be, rather than an opening act, it's a new version of the Dukes. It's the old rhythm section. Chris Masterson on guitar, best guitar player that's ever been in this band. His wife, Eleanor Whitmore, on fiddle and mandolin. My wife's playing piano and organ, and it's kind of stereo redheads. It's pretty cool. But it's, and we've kind of tested positive for jam band. It's like the first, it's a two-part show. There won't be an opening act. It'll be a two-part show. Allison said it'll be part of the show, and it'll be, you may see some of the other guys in the band sing songs too, here and there. And it's, there'll be an intermission. You know you're getting older when the line is longer at the men's room at your shows than at the ladies' room. So we're trying to deal with some of those realities on this tour. So there's an intermission.
You deal a lot with like kicking demons in this book, and I'm curious about where you find yourself like most reflected in this book. If you find
Well, I mean, you know, there's a lot of me and Doc. You know, there's, I mean, that's obvious because I'm, the passages in this book about, you know, opiate withdrawal and being high on opiates are pretty fucking accurate. And it's weird, it was weird to still be writing them after I started this book when I was, so I've got 16 years now. I had like, you know, coming up on 8 when I started it, you know, and then I didn't get a lot done the first couple of years. There was a lot of stopping and starting again. So by the time I wrote, you know, like over half of this book, I was like well up in double digits of recovery. So sitting around and writing stuff about dope was a lot less comfortable, because most of the time, you know, I don't even think about it very much anymore. It happens, but it doesn't happen very often. I hear about it because I go to meetings, and I see people come in, you know, with their, you know, asses in their hands, and that's one of the ways that I stay clean. But and nobody's come back in and said, it's great out there, that we've got this new thing that's happened once. You know, so I keep going, and I just, you know, there's probably me and some of the other characters too. The thing about this book that surprised me the most are the female characters, and it's really hard for men to write female characters, and I think I ended up writing a book where the female characters, I thought that Hank Williams' Ghost was going to be the most important character in this book when I started. Then I thought Doc was going to be the most important character in this book, but neither one of them are. I think Raciela is, and so I'm really, 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 really proud of her. But there's probably as much of me in her as there is in Doc. I mean, it's my fucking book, you know. It all came from me. So. Hey.
How'd you come to be so tight with George Fitzpatrick?
I'm sorry?
How'd you come to be so tight with Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Oh, he's just, you know, God, he turned up at I think at a dollar show that almost everybody I know in Chicago, I know from one night. I played a dollar show at Park West for XRT in 1986, and he was there, and I hijacked a
whole bus.
Yeah, a whole bus full of people, and we got a bunch of people on 1963 Eagle bus, and the driver took a wrong turn and got up under one of the low bridges, and we had to literally move everybody in the front of the bus to the back of the bus to get the bus to go down, and that we could clear this bridge.
I know where the Mexican restaurant was.
Yeah, he did. He knew where, and I was, you know, from Texas, and there still was no Mexican food in Nashville at the time, and I was desperate for a chili relleno, and we stuck Tony Brown, the guy that from my record label that was here with the bill, and I think we stranded him there. I think we left him at the Mexican restaurant. Yeah, he forgot. He ended up. No, he fell asleep on the bus. He had flown here, left all of his stuff, and he fell asleep on our bus and woke up the next day wherever we went next, which was like, you know, Iowa City or something.
The shit was in the hotel.
Yeah, it was all in the hotel. There's Tony over there, by the way. So he's, you know, we've been putting up with each other for a long time, and I've been wrapping my art and his art for 20 years. So. Hey.
What man do you think writes good female characters? Maybe you
I think men, you know, I think Ernest Hemingway, who hated women as far as I could tell, wrote great female characters, you know. I mean, and he didn't hate all women, I don't think. I think he just hated any woman that would like him. You know, I think anybody that can really writes great female characters. I think that's maybe where where you separate, you know, like writers from people that I mean, I just haven't had that much occasion to do it, because in a song, you know, I've done it very little. I may have never done it. And this is, my first play was one built around one female character, and there were more female characters than there were male characters, which is Carla. It's about Carla Faye Tucker. And so that kind of, you know, that kind of got me started on that. It's a completely, totally different thing. I think for what makes it tougher, it's easier for women to write male characters, I think, but I've never had that experience. I think men just, you know, there's this thing that you're going to have to get past. But that being said, I don't think there's any art out there that's worthwhile that's made by people that aren't willing to sort of like, you know, give up a whole bunch of themselves. That's what makes the difference of whether the whole thing's worthwhile for an audience or not. If you're not willing to put a little bit of something out there, then people aren't going to be all that interested for any length of time anyway. So it's not, this is the first book I've written, and I was just surprised that I was able to arrive at that character myself. I'm just sort of, you know, every once in a while you surprise yourself, and that's what keeps you doing it.
If I could change the topic away from the book for a moment, I'd like to hear your thoughts about your experience in having worked on the TV show The Wire.
Well, that's writing too. That's like, you know, it didn't require any acting. I was asked to play a redneck recovering addict, you know. That got rid of a lot of the fear factor right there. So, my only experience with acting is to go out there and say words written by David Simon and, you know, Richard Price and Eric Overmyer. One feature I've done, Tim Blake Nelson wrote. So I've learned a lot about writing in my little bit of time acting, and that's one of the reasons that I love doing it. Theater is my favorite thing, just because live theater, Richard Eyre, I saw Richard Eyre speak at the Public Theater in New York about 10 years ago, and he was trying to explain why live theater is so vital, and it's the analogy he always uses is Michelangelo's snowman, which is this legend that Michelangelo, it snowed in Florence, and Michelangelo made a sculpture from snow, and it doesn't snow very much in Florence, and of course it being Florence, it melted almost immediately, and everyone that saw it said it was the greatest thing that he ever did, but you had to be there. And theater is like that. It's like, every performance is different. Theaters, I had a little bit of involvement in theater as a producer and as a playwright by the time I did The Wire, but I learned what the difference is. I think I know now, like, theater is a playwright and an actor's medium. The actors kind of have it. You know, the writer writes it, and then the actors kind of have it, and they can, you know, the writer's at their mercy once that starts. Even the director's at their mercy, because it's live and it changes every night. Films are a director's medium. The director's making the film, but television is a writer's medium. Most of the it's a producer's medium, but most of the producers in television are writers, and the writers, writers walk different, you know, around television dramas nowadays, especially the ones I've been involved with, which are, you know, both HBO and Showtime are doing really, really great things. But I'll tell you, in New York City, HBO Films is based in New York City, and it's playwrights are writing these shows. People that have written plays and put plays up, and it's considered to be, it's how playwrights, you know, make a living now. You know, and with the people that want to write plays, whose passion is to put live theater up. There are people that are doing that right now, who are writing on one of the shows being produced in New York, and they're putting plays up, you know, downtown in New York City. And right now is, relatively speaking, a pretty good time in theater in New York City the last few years. I think part of that's why. You know, it's probably we've had some pretty cool plays produced there. Not everything cool that ends up downtown New York comes from Chicago first. At the back in the police yard. A lot of good stuff does that.
I was wondering if on the music side, the justice issues you've sung about and talked about, having a baby and a happy marriage, you feel softer about those things, or are you more concerned about the future and the kinds of issues you've always sung about? I write about whatever's going on. There's no way that all that stuff doesn't affect what I'm doing. I don't know. This record was weird because I didn't know what I was writing about. I was writing the songs all I knew is I was writing songs. They began with God is God and I Am a Wanderer, which I wrote for the Joan Baez record. And, you know, I didn't even think about whether I was ever going to sing them when I wrote them. I wrote them for Joan to sing. My father died right around that time that I was making the Joan Baez record. And the rest of the songs were written since then. I wrote
Lonely You're the Free for the film that Tim Blake Nelson wrote, and I recorded it for a version of it for that. And then I wrote The City for the last episode of Treme last year. Then, all I knew about my own record was I wanted to make a record where I was writing the book, I was finishing the book, and I felt like I was sort of hitting on all 8 cylinders as a writer. You know, just shoving words around on a page, and I just wanted to put everything I could into, just push the poetics as far past the decimal point as possible, until the last minute. So, to facilitate that, I made the decision that I didn't want to be a producer. I didn't want to be an arranger. So I hired T-Bone Burnett, and I didn't make anything more elaborate than a guitar and vocal demo. And then I'd send them off to T-Bone, and then I'd go on to the next thing, go back to work on a book, or write another song, shoot another scene of the first season of Treme. I just sort of was doing all those things at the same time. So I finished the record, and I was a little worried because I didn't know what it was about. I'd recorded everything, and then I sequenced it, and then I realized that it was about the same things that the book was about. It was just like the only art I could have made in the last 3 years. And the one thing that holds them all together is spirituality and mortality, you know. And it's not. I sort of discovered that death is something that we do really poorly, in my opinion, in this society. I watched my dad die, and he was terrified. And everybody around him was terrified. And I watched another friend die around the same time, who died in Woodstock, around people who were raised. First I noticed there was a difference in the way that I dealt with it and the way my brothers and sisters dealt with it. And older members of my family as well. And then this friend of mine died in Woodstock, and he was surrounded by people. He had cancer, and he was in remission. It looked like it was going to be okay, and then he got sick, and he was gone really quickly. But he wasn't as scared, and he wasn't. And the people around him were ready for it, and they gave him permission to go. And I think our process of dying and grieving is concerned with everybody but the person that's got to die. I think it's all about us. And I've heard people say that unapologetically. Well, funerals are for the living. Yeah, it's a bunch of shit that happens before the funeral, before anybody actually dies, that are for the living too. And sometimes we forget about the person that's good and ready to do. It's probably the hardest thing that we'll ever do. And it's like anything else worth doing as well as you can do it. And you deserve a shot at doing that. And I'm not sure the way we describe death. I mean, people make fun of me because I'm a Harry Potter freak, and it's like, but what I love about those books is those books are about death. Children, a whole generation of children have learned about death in a way that just doesn't exist in our society normally. It's about the fact that it's going to happen to everybody, and that it's part of life, and it's really not something to be terrified of. We're all naturally afraid of what we don't know, of the unknown, of when we don't know what's happening out there, and none of us know. But I just, the whole experience was, I discovered I'd written this whole record that was about the same things that the book was about, so I just decided to call it the same thing and then attempt to capitalize on the confusion.
You mentioned earlier about the link